Welcome back to the War on Consciousness. My name is Aaron Abke, and once again, I'm joined alongside my good friend and co-host, Brandon Bozarth. And in this episode today, we're going to be looking at three historical events in American history, three sort of covert operations that were all tied in together to carry out this purpose of mind control on the American public. And that is Operation Paperclip, MK Ultra, and Project Mockingbird. And these different sort of covert operations really show the government and the CIA's desire to control the thoughts and, of course, behaviors of the masses to influence elections and public policy and all the other things we see happening in the world today. And I think that we really are seeing the fruition of these covert operations that have been happening behind the scenes in the mainstream media and in Hollywood and big tech to persuade and influence the way that Americans think. We really are seeing this come to a head today, and that we are the most divided and polarized that we've ever been in our nation's history. And of course, we know that a population that is divided is a population that is easily controlled. And so we're going to also discuss the origin of terms like conspiracy theory and other words like misinformation and censorship that are currently being used as mind control devices in our world today, and just many of the tactics that are used on us every day to control the ways that we believe and the ways that we think and the ways that we behave. And then most importantly, as always, we want to look at what is this a reflection of within ourselves? What are these mind control devices that we're inundated with in every angle of our society, asking us to heal within our consciousness? How can we use this knowledge we're learning about today to free our minds from all the forms of control that we are unconsciously agreeing with each and every day? And how can we become more conscious of the media that we consume and the different forms of propaganda that we allow into our minds? So I think the best way to kick this off, Brandon, is just to begin by answering this question. When we use this term mind control, what are we really talking about?
Yeah, Aaron, well, you said something that kind of hit it dead on, and it was the unconscious agreements. And so mind control is when someone is in a state of receptivity, namely their unconscious mind. And this happens perfectly when we're watching TV, media, entertainment, or art. We let down our defenses and we completely open up. And in hypnotism, they put you in a very similar state. And the state is essentially distract the conscious mind and then influence subtly or subliminally influence the unconscious mind with suggestion. And this is the basis of hypnotism. You'll see that the acts of confusion or extremely fast-paced movements, a hypnotist will have you follow their finger and very quickly, like tap your forehead, and right in that moment give you a command, and the brain will latch onto the command because it's in a moment of uncertainty and it craves certainty, because certainty is connected, or has been believed to be connected, to our safety, to our survival. So mind control is a way of focusing the mind in a certain way that creates a state of either intense focus on something that then can create surprise or shock or uncertainty, where then simultaneously there's a message, there is some sort of unconscious delivery of information that then goes on to unconsciously influence your behavior and how you see the world.
Yeah, and along those lines, Brandon, I think, we all know that there's something deeply wrong with our world today. We're being told a certain narrative by our world leaders and regulatory bodies, and it's always presented as virtue, virtue, virtue. But intuitively, we feel something deeply disturbing is happening behind the scenes, and that what we're being told is actually not the true agenda that's being carried out. And this is something I call false light, which is the number one strategy of the negative polarity, in that the negative polarity is incredibly wise, extremely intelligent and crafty with their tactics. And the way that they manipulate the light is by presenting the light with what it wants to hear and see. They'll always prey on our need for justice, for one example. These are the bad people, they've done a very bad thing, and if we want to get justice and righteousness accomplished, we got to hate these people or take them out, or whatever the case may be. And so these are the ways that we become divided, because if they can tell us who our enemy is and we don't agree on that enemy, then, we become enemies to one another. And so this really becomes an amazing catalyst, doesn't it? That invites us to begin questioning our thoughts and look inside of ourselves and become aware of these unconscious areas of our mind that the negative path can manipulate, because the negative path can only manipulate a mind that is not self-aware. A mind that is self-aware cannot be controlled. And so the negative path is the path of mind control and psychological manipulation. That is how the negative polarity polarizes more negatively. And this is what Ra discusses in the Law of One, many different segments, that the negative polarity cannot influence a crystallized being or a mind that is completely purified of all distortions, because there's no ignorance or blind spots to take advantage of any longer. And so we really do see this in our media today, and from many different areas, but we've just become so desensitized that we don't even know when we're being propagandized any longer. Most of us don't even know the difference between truth and propaganda. And this is very much the way that, these elite deep state leaders want it. They want there to be a lot of confusion and uncertainty, because then they can provide the certainty, right? So whether it's the mainstream media, our government leaders, regulatory bodies, the medical industry, they all will repeat the same phrases over and over and over again to begin planting these thoughts in the minds of the masses. And so what we're going to talk about today with the MK Ultra experiments that were ran for 20 years, that many of the things that we're trying to discover in these experiments is how do you implant a thought, a belief in someone's mind so deeply that they believe it's their own thought. And so we know famously they were carrying out these experiments in a number of ways, through sleep deprivation, electric shock therapy to traumatize the mind, and even through large doses of LSD. Because what their experiments were revealing to them is that if you can get the mind in a state of trauma, trauma is a defense mechanism that allows the mind to capture information. And so through electroshock therapy, traumatizing someone's mind and playing these tapes on a loop for hours on end, these thoughts became implanted in people's subconscious. Or through LSD and getting somebody into a mystical experience where their mind is very open and they're in a state of the defenses are down. You can also do things and play these tapes for hours to implant thoughts deeply into someone's consciousness. But another factor that MK Ultra revealed to our scientists in the CIA was that repetition is one of the most effective ways to do this, because we obviously can't electroshock the public through the TV or dose them with, Albert Hoffman's LSD or something. But what we can do is make every news station repeat the exact same things over and over and over again until the public believes that it's their own thoughts and ideas. And, I can really attest to this, Brandon. Growing up as a Christian conservative, I was born and raised Republican my whole life up to my early 20s. And what really made me not want to be a Republican anymore was once Obama became president, and I saw how the GOP news was just constantly attacking Obama for being, whatever the stories were. He's not really an American. He's co-opted for some other terrorist country, whatever. They were just always berating President Obama, trying to degrade him and make him seem like the worst person on planet Earth. And at first, as a Republican, I bought into it. But after a certain amount of time, I began to become suspicious of what I was hearing, of like, is this all true or is this propaganda? And I got so sick of it that I eventually didn't consider myself a Republican anymore, and then winded up becoming a Democrat for about 10 years and was very much on the political left. And then the same thing happened when Trump was elected. I was very much a liberal at that time, and just the constant propaganda of hearing that Trump's a racist. And I wasn't seeing any real evidence to back that up other than the claims being made on all of the left-wing news stations every day. And I worked at Google at the time, where all my clients were, also on the far left of the spectrum and saying the same things the news was repeating. And I got to see this correlation of, I hear it on the news, I hear all my clients repeat it. And I got to this point of feeling very creepy about it. Like we're all being brainwashed or something and nobody realizes it. And so, as you said, Brandon, it's really the mind's need for certainty that lies at the root of mind control. If we can tell you who the enemy is by saying it enough times, this person's a dictator, a tyrant, whatever. They're a very bad person. You shouldn't trust them. And maybe you shouldn't trust them, right? But you should do the research yourself and come to your own conclusions based on your own intuition and research. And when an outside source is telling you over and over and over again, you should become very suspicious of the agenda and the intention. Because once we know who the enemy is, then they can point the needle of which direction you're supposed to go. The enemy's this way, you should go that way. And suddenly your behavior is being outsourced to the powers that be. And so that's why the don't know mind of Buddhism is the path to liberation. When I don't need to know all the answers, when I don't pretend like I can know the truth for myself, I can have so much certainty about everything I hear when I don't need to have that anymore. I can hold things loosely with an open hand and say, okay, one side is saying this, another side's saying that. Let me just listen to my intuition and do my own research on this and come to my own conclusions. Shut the television off, do my own research. If everyone was able to do that and hold their beliefs loosely, I think we'd be living in a very different world today.
Yeah, I love that so much, Aaron. And it makes me think of 9/11, our previous episode, and how a collective trauma was created. And there's so much uncertainty. Will we be attacked tomorrow? Who's attacking us? Who's alive? Who died? Who's responsible? All of this uncertainty. Will we go to war? And then we're given certainty right in that moment. This is who's responsible.
Right.
This is the way we're going to resolve it. And we just eat it up. Why? Not because it makes sense, but because it was the only certainty we could grasp onto to get out of fear, to get out of uncertainty. And so if you really understand how powerful the unconscious mind is, because in that moment that was an unconscious agreement, then you'll see, and many studies show, that over 90% of our decision making is made by our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind is our conditioning. It's what we have blindly assumed to be true. And like Aaron said, from repetition, from what we're told in moments of uncertainty, growing up, our education system, beliefs passed down from our parents. And so if you think of it like your conscious mind as a small circle, and it lives within your unconscious mind, the more you become conscious, all of that conditioning in that outer circle, which is determining your behavior, responses, and reactions to life, as you become more and more conscious of your own unconscious mind, you become less manipulatable. And you start, in a sense, sinking into yourself and becoming more aware and more aware and more aware until there is no unconscious mind, until you are fully conscious. And that is synonymous with being fully sovereign. And so the gift, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in this episode, but the gift of the manipulation we see in the world is it's bringing to the surface our own unconscious beliefs and paradigms and identity of who and what we think we are to the surface to be questioned, so we can realize the freedom that is always available to us. We've just it's simply been veiled from us.